Welcome back to another episode of the E30 Beams build. Today, we are going to be tackling the fuel rail fuel pressure regulator system in the Beams E30. This is a product that I'm actually super stoked on, and the reason that I am is because I'm way more excited. Cheers. I run this in my Pro car and it made plumbing the fuel system on the Pro car really freaking easy. Real quick before we get started, Radium has been a sponsor of mine for some time, so let me just get that out there so there's full transparency. They sponsored me and they also sponsored the E30 build, so they sent in these products. My boy Aaron. I met Aaron in Saudi Arabia. We went out there, they had a big car festival show and all this stuff, and we were like the first Americans in the kingdom in like a long time outside of the embassy. So it was really cool, but I met Aaron out there, talked with them, and I was like, hey, like, what do you do? And he's like, I run Radium. And I was like, that's right, I know Radium. And then when we got into building the Pro car, it was just natural that we were gonna hit him up to do our fuel solution stuff. Talking with Aaron, we ended up getting a hold of a 10-gallon fuel cell, a 3-pump system, so we have a pickup into our Radium Surge and then 2 feeds to the motor. And one is just there for when a certain RPM hits and pressure starts to drop, we turn the other pump on to get that pressure and keep it consistent across the board. So we found out when it started to drop around the time, and the tuner tuned the fuel pump to come on before it started dropping so that there was no pressure drop at all. Super sick, shout out proper tuning. But with Radium, we have had 0 issues. And I mean like 0 issues, like nothing's ever gone wrong with any of our pumps, none of our fuel cell stuff leak, none of that. Combine that with some of the Phoenix Industries products, like all the AN fittings and whatnot, I haven't had a single fueling issue in my car at all. I'm trying to think, like, not a single one. Radium sells this really cool thing here, and this is called a fuel pressure regulator. And what this does is it maintains a certain PSI without overpressuring the system, and it allows you to also set it up to where you don't underpressure the system. So to explain this really fast, in your fueling system, a lot of guys like to do like split offs, and they regulate prior to the fuel rail with like the Corvette setups, fuel filter, regulator combinations. Those things are cool, all that stuff works, don't get me wrong, but when you get into a little bit more serious power, you're gonna wanna get a better pressure regulator, and this particular one from Radium is awesome because if you look here, you can actually direct thread this to the fuel rail. So the way that we run the Pro car, which is the proper way of fueling your car, is that we have a fuel line that comes directly from the pump, goes through 2 different fuel filters. There's like a 100 micron and a 10 micron or something like that. I mean, I don't know exactly which order because I can't remember microns and how they work. I think it was like, I don't know, more the higher the number, the finer the mesh or something. It goes through the filters, the line comes up to the fuel rails, and then all 100% of what that pump can do goes through the fuel rails, and then at the end of the fuel rails is this dude right here. So all the fuel comes in, full pressure, no restriction at all, and then hits the pressure regulator, and then it comes out of the bottom. And on the bottom side, we have the return line that goes back to the fuel tank. So some of you guys run returnless systems, you run different styles. Like the Beams, for instance, originally comes with a returnless system in it, but the tank that's in the E30 comes with a return system. So I'm gonna be converting the Beams motor to a return system. And the only way that I ever thought about doing it was using this Radium fuel pressure regulator because it makes it simple and you can screw this directly into the fuel rail. Here's the catch. On the Beams fuel rail, we have a M12-125 thread pitch. Problem is that this is too big. So we got an adapter that takes it down. So it goes down from a 10 to an 8. So we have a tap that I had laying around, shout out to my dad, but this is a 9/16/64, which will fit that ORB fitting there. We'll figure it out, we'll get it done. Let's go tap the rail. That went pretty smooth. Now let's try to get a tap in there. Now this part we want to be pretty freaking square with because we don't want these threads to go in crooked. get it to where it's like starting, and then we can kind of get the desired angle and approach. That looks good. It's pretty soft material because it's aluminum. So it cuts pretty easy, but okay, we want to get it going right, and then just least resistance as possible. Seems like it's going in pretty damn straight. I'm not like fighting it any which way. I'm kind of allowing it to do the cut and allowing it to have like the aluminum kind of help guide it in nice and even. Back it out. Nice and smooth. I'm kind of pulling back on it just a little bit to get it to come out smooth because there's a bunch of chips and grimy stuff in there. Normally when you tap, you'll use something like cutting oil or tapping oil or even just regular engine oil, just something to lubricate it. But and then obviously after you do this, you need to clean out the entire fuel rail. Not quite as far as I would like them to be, so we're gonna go ahead and go back in. Now we're getting near toward that end there. We're not gonna wanna push past because it'll pull some threads out. So we just wanna get to where it stops, which is about right there. We should be able to start to see the tap through that first injector hole. And we'll stop there and we'll run it back out nice. Last road's getting messed up now. Let's check it. There she is. Boom. All right, now that's tapped. This is an ORB fitting. So what I'm gonna need to do is somehow taper this area to get a seat for that O-ring there. But now it's tapped and I didn't have to go search for the parts or wait for shipping or anything. Now the hole is drilled and tapped. I just cleaned out the fuel rail so there's no more metal shavings in it. For peace of mind for myself, what I like to do is pretty much drench my threads in Loctite. This is an aluminum fuel rail, so if I ever had to get this out, I could heat it up and melt the Loctite to get it out. Loctite also works as like a sealer on threads. So if you put enough of it on there, it'll actually get into the threads, dry up and seal everything. So I'm gonna Loctite mine. I know everyone's gonna probably have something to say about it. I've been doing it for a long time. It's just, again, a peace of mind thing. I've even Tefloned a little bit on my ORB fittings, which again, I know that the O-ring is what seals it, but for the sake of never leaking ever, I like to take extra precautions, especially when it comes to fuel. The reason is because I've been in fuel fires. Fuel fires aren't fun. They're very hard to put out. If your tank goes, good luck. If your fuel rail goes, you can shut down your fuel and try to fight the little bit of fire, and hopefully it runs out of fuel. And hopefully the fire runs out of fuel is what I'm saying, and we can put that out. I don't want to deal with any of it, so I'm going to put some nice good amount of Loctite on there to help seal these threads along with the ORB, and I don't ever really see a situation where I need to take this off. So I'm planning on making it permanent because I don't anticipate removing it. This is how I double check and seal all kinds of crap on my car, and I've never had any issues with it. So I'm being very generous with this stuff. There she goes. Nice thick layer of Loctite. The O-ring seated in it now. An aluminum AN wrench, just to give us a little extra extra snug. Like I mean generous, like I'm being generous. There's a lot of Loctite on this. So now that that's there, we can screw our direct mount regulator. So there's our return aspect and our regulator all in one little package that bolts directly to our fuel rail. Pretty freaking sick. Again, I really love this system. So if you head to radiumauto.com and you look up the direct mount regulators, you will find this on their website, and you can plug this into almost any aftermarket rail for the LS engine and for tons of other engines. There's no extra brackets or anything special that has to be made because Radium already made a very special fuel pressure regulator. So a big thank you to those boys. Let's get this thing in the car and kind of figure out what else we gotta do. We obviously have the feed line that's gonna be going up here, and now that I'm looking at this whole thing, I mean, I was looking at it the other day and I was like, man, I would really like to convert this top port here, which is actually the main feed on the Beam's engine when this is OEM. And I kind of wish that it was more of a banjo, because if it was a banjo, then I can get my line to come off in like this general area, and I can turn it just before the regulator and then align my second line with it and handcuff those bad boys all the way down to feed and return lines. But let's go double check it in the car and we'll see what we can throw on the backside of this. Look at that. So now we have the dash 6 sitting off the backside, and again, this whole thing swivels now and the bottom rotates also. So we can figure out if we want to put a 45 on that, which I'm leaning toward, or a 90 on it. I didn't think a 90 would fit in here, but a 90 actually would work pretty damn good. And then there's our dash 6 on top. So fuel rail all brushed back up and the fuel system back on. The next thing to do is jump into the fuel lines to connect the fuel pressure regulator and the main feed line into the hard line. This way works perfect. If you guys are doing this swap, go get the Radium direct mount pressure regulator. It'll change your life. Or if you have a different car, a JZ, an LS, so whatever you want to put in your car, an SR, if you can get the fuel rail to accept that regulator, it will change your life and you'll never buy another pressure regulator. I'm just sharing with you guys the things that I really like. There's literally no reason not to go get that. So if you're doing that fuel system and you want to make it legit and nice and perfect and not have to do extra work, Radium boys. And I appreciate all of you guys for continuing to watch the series. I cannot wait to get this thing done. I just want to drive it. But I also want to show you guys how it's going together and exactly like how I build my cars. I hope this has been informative. I hope that you have learned something. As always, boys, stay safe. Peace. All right, guys, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel in another way, you can head to holdfast-usa.com. Buy anything on the website. It helps us keep this content coming to you. Huge thanks to the sponsors as well who support all these different series that we want to bring you guys. Give them a follow, give them a like, tell them Micah sent you. As always, boys, stay safe.